Hi there. I'm Laci. When I was 16, my parents left me stranded at a dusty bus depot in El Paso like I didn't matter. Now, 22 years later, they're suing me because I refused to pay off their debts. They vanished without a goodbye, and now they want money? But that was just the beginning. What kind of parents fake illness, forge documents, and turn your own blood against you? Have you ever felt like the people meant to protect you were the ones breaking you? What time are you hearing this? And where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd really love to know. The letter came certified, bold, red-stamped, just as I was rehearsing my investor pitch on the 32nd floor. I remember the hiss of the espresso machine in the break room, the way my assistant's heels clicked against polished concrete, the hollow thud of that envelope dropping onto my desk. "From a Dennis Langford," she said, hesitant. The moment I saw his name, something inside me locked down. I hadn't heard it spoken aloud in nearly 2 decades, yet it hit like a hammer to the chest. My fingers hesitated, hovered. Then I tore the seal open. It was a lawsuit, filed in Harris County. "Failure of filial responsibility," it read. "Neglect, abandonment." I laughed, dry, instinctual. My hands trembled, barely. "Not again," I muttered. I dialed James, my attorney. "Yeah, it's real," he said, voice low. "He's invoking a statute used maybe twice in the last 20 years. Claims you've turned your back on your aging parents, and he's demanding compensation, emotional damages, even restitution for parental investment. He's insane." "And determined," James replied. "We need to talk strategy." I ended the call and stared out the window at Dallas, wide glass walls framing a skyline of steel and heat haze, and then the memory pulled me under. 16 years ago. It was El Paso in July, merciless sun, not a cloud in sight. I was 16. We were supposed to be visiting Grandma, but they were edgy the entire drive, bickering over gas money, motel rates, my grades. At the bus depot, Mom told me to grab drinks. "Coke for him, diet for me," she said. The vending machine was old, coins jammed halfway in. When I turned back, the car was gone. I waited. 5 minutes, then 10, texted, called, straight to voicemail. And then the message arrived. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home. Life lesson." It wasn't a joke. Sweat beaded behind my knees. I asked the station manager to use the phone. No answer. No relatives near enough. I slept on a bench that night, using my hoodie as a pillow. The ache in my chest turned to something else, something darker. Eventually I called Aunt Anitra. She wired bus fare, no questions asked. She didn't say much, just, "Come home. I'll be waiting." Back in the present, I stood over my desk and let the paper drop. They left me to rot in the desert. Now they wanted honor, payment, forgiveness. Not once had they called. Not birthdays, not holidays, nothing but silence. And now this. I pressed the call button again. James picked up. "Set a meeting," I said. "I want to counter this. Publicly." He exhaled. "You sure you want this out there?" They drew first blood. Later, I sat alone in my office. The city buzzed beneath me, glass and metal, millions of strangers going about their day. I typed the text slowly, deliberately. "You want war? You just got it." My phone lit up like a fire alarm at dawn. A flurry of notifications, pings, and frantic texts from my assistant nearly drowned out the espresso machine grinding in the background. I hadn't even made it to the kitchen when I saw the headline, "The Daughter Who Forgot Her Roots." Below it, a filtered photo of me mid-laugh, ripped from a company event, paired with a caption that screamed, "Built her empire on her parents' sacrifices." I froze. Scrolling down, the article spun a story soaked in self-pity and strategic half-truths. After decades of love and support, Dennis Langford and his wife were abandoned by the very child they nurtured, it read. While their daughter Laci lives in a luxury high-rise in Dallas, they struggle with rising medical bills and heartbreak. I didn't need a byline to know who funded it. Dennis. "Laci," a text buzzed in. "Clients are calling. Some investors want statements. Need to meet now." I barely registered the rest. My stomach turned. not from fear, from fury. Then came the real blow. A trending video, over 600,000 views and climbing. I clicked. Darlie lay in what looked like a hospital bed, her cheeks sunken, hair matted beneath a bandana. Monitors beeped softly behind her. A trembling voice. I may not have much time left, but what hurts more than cancer is knowing my daughter won't even visit me, won't pick up the phone, not even to say goodbye. A choked sob, a hand reaching off camera to squeeze hers. I stared, not blinking. My chest burned, not because I believed her, because the comments did. She's disgusting. No heart, just money. Typical. The rich always forget who raised them. I hit pause. The IV was taped over her sleeve. No hospital would allow that. The logo behind her, barely visible, looked more like a set piece than any medical facility I'd ever seen. I exhaled slowly. Fake, but effective. My office line rang, twice, 3 times, then my cell. I let them ring. The news was spreading faster than I could contain. Another buzz. This time, a voicemail from a former business partner. Laci, this looks bad. You might want to put out a statement, something gentle, even if it's not true. I deleted the message. Number. They wanted me to kneel. They didn't understand I'd spent my entire life learning how to stand. They thought guilt was my Achilles heel. It used to be. I opened my laptop and started searching. Backgrounds, fake hospitals, prop rentals. I cross-referenced the name stitched on the fake blanket Darlie used. I bookmarked everything. Then I picked up my phone and called an old contact, a PI I'd hired once when a disgruntled contractor tried to sabotage one of my builds. Still in business? I asked. Always. What do you need? I sent him the video clip. Find out where this was filmed, who rented the space, who wired the lights. I want names, and I want leverage. There was a long pause, then, damn. Okay, you got it. I stared at the wall as the sun rose across Dallas, spilling gold through the glass. My reflection stared back, calm, unshaken. They wanted a war of guilt and gossip, but I had something sharper. I could think, and I never forgot. The manila envelope on my desk felt heavier than it should have. I opened it with the edge of a letter opener, not because I needed to be careful, just because I needed to breathe. Inside, photos of a rental studio dressed up like a hospital room, a receipt for prop rentals dated the week before, and a headshot of the nurse. She wasn't even SAG certified, a failed soap actress from Fort Worth. They didn't just lie, they built a whole damn play. Every detail, down to the beeping monitors and taped IV line, was rehearsed. A script aimed at breaking me in the court of public opinion. But the more I stared, the more the sharp edges of hurt began to dull. Not because it didn't hurt, because the ridiculousness was clarifying. They'd turned my life into theater, bad theater. I sat back in my chair, the skyline of Dallas rising like a wall behind the tinted glass. Part of me wanted to scream, but another part, the part they'd underestimated, was calculating. My inbox pinged, another link, subject, "You need to see this." I clicked, the video played. A younger version of me, 16, wild-eyed, flushed, stood in front of a motel door, shouting into a flip phone. "No, I won't lie for you again." The screen shook as if someone had recorded it secretly from a car. Then, a slam. My figure vanished into the room. The caption? Teen girl runs away from home. Ungrateful daughter turns violent. I couldn't move. That footage was real, but twisted. That night, I'd refused to go along with a scheme Dennis had cooked up to claim insurance for storm damage that never happened. They kicked me out after I said no. I spent that night crying on a metal bench, dialing numbers that never picked up. Now it was being paraded online like proof of their heartbreak. My chest tightened as I scrolled the comments. She's always been trouble. Poor parents. Trash in designer clothes. The bile in my throat tasted like old shame. But I didn't cry. Instead, I opened a blank document. Typed. Deleted. Typed again. I wanted to say everything. That I had survived abandonment, that the video was sliced, timed, and framed like a trap, that they were the liars, the manipulators, the cowards. But I knew what they wanted. They wanted the emotional meltdown, the press conference, the teary confession. They wanted me on my knees. I closed the tab. Across the room, my assistant poked her head in. Do you want to respond? The clip's making the rounds. Morning shows are... No, I said, cutting her off. I want a list of digital rights experts. I want to know who uploaded it, who funded the ads boosting it, and I want them on the line yesterday. She nodded and backed out, no questions asked. I pulled up my lawyer's number and texted, "Prepare a cease and desist, and tell me what it takes to press criminal defamation charges." Then I hit play on the video again, pausing on the final frame, my teenage face frozen mid-scream. My jaw clenched. My eyes were dry. Let them show the world that girl. They had no idea who she grew up to be. The report came in a navy blue folder, stamped confidential and sealed like it held a bomb. My attorney slid it across the table without a word. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I studied his face instead. Too calm, too professional. Go ahead, he said. It's disturbing. Inside, a police report dated 16 years ago, my name typed in all caps. Juvenile runaway. The narrative, I'd fled home without cause, was emotionally unstable, possibly violent, signed by Dennis, a second name listed as witness. It was a version of me I didn't recognize, and never lived. The photo attached was real. 16, bruised cheekbone from falling on gravel the night they left me at the depot. But the timestamp had been doctored. So had the precinct details. Yet it looked official. Too official. My throat tightened. This is fiction. Dangerous fiction, my lawyer said. If they submitted this in support of the lawsuit, it could impact your credibility in court, and financially. If the IRS links this narrative to earlier tax claims, it opens doors. They're rewriting history, I whispered, to bury me in it. Before I could process that, my phone lit up again. Another notification. Inez. Her name stared back at me from a scanned affidavit. Sworn statement. Laci exhibited frequent emotional outbursts, expressed a desire to leave home repeatedly, refused to honor her parents' sacrifices. I couldn't breathe. Not her. Anyone but her. 16 years ago. We sat behind my aunt's trailer, pinky fingers hooked under the summer moon. We never lie to each other, no matter what. She meant it then, or at least I believed she did. I dialed, straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I wouldn't beg. I moved like glass through my house that night, fragile but sharp. Turned off every light, room by room, until the house pulsed in shadows. My fingers grazed the frame on the hallway shelf. Me and Inez, high school graduation. Her head leaned against mine, both of us in matching gowns, identical smiles. I lifted the photo and flipped it over. The backing peeled easily. I slid the picture out and dropped it in the trash. If you sell your name, you don't get to keep mine. Grief swelled, but it never reached the surface. It calcified somewhere deeper, under my ribs. They had crossed a line, and Inez, she'd sold our history like it had a discount tag. I texted my attorney. Get me every document they've submitted, originals, no redactions. I want to know what they're building. Then I called my office. Pull Inez's accounts. I want to see what she's bought in the last 6 months, and check real estate transfers under her name. Let's see what loyalty costs these days. I walked back to my study and laid the juvenile file on the desk. My 16-year-old face stared up at me, paper thin, weaponized. I struck a match. The email subject line read, "For your eyes only, no signature, just a zip folder and a message. Ask yourself what she's really worth." Inside were scanned PDFs, dated, notarized, and stamped. A promissory agreement from Dennis, guaranteeing Inez 15% of the estate in the event they succeeded in litigation. Signed 3 weeks before she testified. So that was her price. I leaned back in my chair, heat rising from my chest to my jaw. Loyalty wasn't broken. It had been sold. I thought about the last time I'd seen Inez defend me. 16 years ago. She stood between me and Dennis in the driveway, arms flung wide, daring him to call me ungrateful again. Now her silence screamed louder than her defense ever had. Blood doesn't mean truth, and loyalty bought is betrayal earned. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just pressed forward on the email and typed one sentence to my lawyer: use it. But the day wasn't done cutting. I walked into my bank expecting a quick meeting with my advisor. Instead, the branch manager met me with a forced smile and escorted me to a glass-walled room. Her voice was brittle when she spoke. There's been a claim against your accounts. A $200,000 debt, backed by a notarized loan agreement signed under your name. She slid the documents across the table. My name, perfectly forged. My business tax ID. Even the notary's stamp was real. We had no choice. The accounts are frozen until this is resolved legally. I didn't understand at first. I stared at the zeros on the screen, not in my balance, but in the space where access used to be. Gone. My phone buzzed in my purse, 4 missed calls from vendors, 1 from my accountant, 2 investors were texting, urgent. I felt the panic rising, but I strangled it before it reached the surface. My mind kicked into strategy. They didn't just want to hurt me, they wanted to erase me, piece by piece, brick by brick. I stepped outside, sun glaring off my windshield like an accusation. That's when I saw her, Inez, standing near the family duplex, talking to a city inspector like she owned it. I walked straight up to her. You cashed in, I said. She turned, startled. Laci, you sold your soul for 15%. Her eyes flickered. It's not like that. Things are tight. I needed something secure. It's just business? I asked. She looked away. You wouldn't understand. I laughed. Cold, sharp. When this is over, you won't recognize what family feels like anymore. I didn't wait for a reply. That night, I sat alone in my home office. The lights were low. The only glow came from my laptop screen. I opened a blank document and began typing. The letter was addressed to the public. I told my story, not in full, not yet, but enough. Enough to draw a line in the sand. They thought I'd break. I wouldn't. I ended it simply. I won't be shamed into silence. Let's see who survives the storm. I clicked post at exactly midnight. 20 minutes later, my inbox pinged. A local news anchor I hadn't spoken to in years. Her message was brief. There's a bigger story, and it's not just about you anymore. I didn't expect to feel satisfaction that morning. But when my attorney slid the printout across the table, I grinned. Who the hell notarized that loan again? I asked. He tapped the name, Calvin Brewster, former notary public. Disbarred, convicted twice, once for fraud, once for document forgery. He used to work as a back-office clerk for Darley's first boutique. I remembered the name. He hit on me when I was 17. So they weren't just sloppy, they were arrogant. Within an hour, we filed a motion to introduce Brewster's record into discovery. By noon, the court had issued a provisional reversal. The accounts were no longer frozen. I exhaled for the first time in days. The knot in my chest loosened, but it didn't dissolve. They forged the chains thinking I'd wear them. I just turned them into evidence. Then came the second blow, this one unexpected. An anonymous email with the subject line. You don't know the half of it. No attachments, no threats, just a phone number and... I worked on the hospital set. I didn't know it was a lie. We met in the back booth of a coffee shop off East 6th. He couldn't have been more than 25. Nervous hands, caffeine breath, and eyes that wouldn't meet mine. They hired me to run cameras, he said. Said it was a docudrama about medical injustice. The scripts came from someone named Darley, and I thought it was like real advocacy, but he pulled a USB from his hoodie. This is raw footage, behind the scenes. The nurse? She was asking for retakes. The beeping machine? Soundtrack we looped. She didn't even have a real IV. I didn't say thank you. I said, will you testify? He nodded. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just took the drive and walked out with a pulse like steady gunfire. Back at my office, I locked the door, dimmed the lights. I watched the footage in silence, Darlie stepping on her lines, laughing, the director calling cut, then her, dead serious, whispering, "Make sure the tubes look clean." My daughter's followers are judgmental. Let them judge this. My legal team worked overnight. We uploaded the drive to encrypted cloud storage, then sorted every clip, every document. The contracts were there, signed by her under a different LLC. Everything stank of control and cowardice. By morning, we filed an emergency evidentiary petition. Within hours, the court responded. Darlie was officially subpoenaed for her complete medical records. She had 72 hours. I stood at my window as dawn crept over Austin. Cars moved like muted thoughts below me, silent and detached. This wasn't a family feud. This was a criminal conspiracy, with my name as collateral. The footage came in silence, delivered on a secure drive, wrapped in a plain envelope like a relic too volatile for fingerprints. I clicked play in my lawyer's office, hands steady, throat dry. There she was, Darlie, wearing the hospital gown like a Halloween costume. She adjusted the IV tape herself, fumbled with a prop oxygen tube, then paused to rehearse a line. "Just make it look like I'm tired," she said to the director, then ran her fingers through her hair and looked toward the camera. "Start when I cry, not before." I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The air in the room thickened with vindication. My lawyer watched it twice, then printed the motion. We didn't just ask for dismissal. We pushed for criminal charges: fraud, perjury, defamation. By noon, headlines had shifted. What was once a pitiful family drama became public theater. Mother stages terminal illness in lawsuit against daughter. Cable news anchors called it the grift of the year. Podcasters dug through public records. The same trolls who once demanded I apologize were now flooding my inbox with apologies of their own. Truth isn't just a defense. It's the bulletproof vest I wish I had years ago, but I wasn't done. I filed a countersuit, no longer defensive, but deliberate. My accusations: defamation, emotional abuse, falsifying legal documents, and financial fraud. Everything they'd weaponized. I turned back, paper by paper. My team constructed a timeline, stretching from the moment they left me at that El Paso depot to the day Dennis forged my name on a loan. It wasn't isolated cruelty, it was a pattern. And now it was in front of a judge. In the preliminary hearing, Darlie cracked under pressure. Her voice, once tremulous with practiced victimhood, shook with panic. The judge asked her to clarify the origin of her diagnosis, and she blinked like a deer under halogen. Dennis tried to intimidate me in the corridor. He stepped too close. "This isn't over," he muttered. I walked past him without slowing. For years, I thought, I begged you to see me. Now you will, from the other side of the courtroom. The countersuit was accepted. For the first time, they weren't plaintiffs. They were defendants. The media frenzy hit a second wave. Former acquaintances surfaced, offering affidavits and quiet apologies. Old classmates sent me messages. We always wondered what really happened. And then, just before court adjourned, the judge tapped his pen against the desk. "We will be opening a full investigation into Mr. and Mrs. Collins' past legal filings and medical records, effective immediately." That wasn't a ruling. That was the sound of a dam cracking. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom like glass. "Based on submitted evidence and sworn testimony, this court will open a formal investigation into Dennis and Darlie Collins for potential document fraud, perjury, and attempted civil extortion." I didn't smile. I didn't move. I just let the words sink in like cool rain over scorched earth. The room shifted. What used to be silent judgment now echoed with quiet awe. My name, once dragged through media sludge, became a signal flare for justice. As I walked out of the courthouse, every signature, every forged memory they'd tried to weaponize played in my mind. 16 years of gaslighting, of being called dramatic, difficult, unstable. Truth doesn't shout. It waits until the noise clears, and then it strikes. By evening, media outlets pivoted. Headlines reframed me, not as a prodigal daughter, but as a woman betrayed. One outlet wrote, "Daughter turned defendant, now turns the tide." I didn't read the comments. I didn't need applause. I needed sleep. The knock came just past 9. I opened the door to find Inez, clutching a tote bag, tears already forming. "I shouldn't have signed anything," she said before I could speak. "They twisted everything. I didn't know what I was agreeing to." Her eyes scanned the apartment like she was looking for the version of me who'd let her stay. "We were kids, Laci," she whispered. "We said we'd always have each other's backs." A memory surfaced, 2 little girls pinky swearing under a fort of bedsheets. But I couldn't hold on to it, not now. She hesitated, then said it. "Dennis, he asked me to talk to you. Said the court's turning, and I could help fix this." And there it was. The truth, served behind watery eyes and a crackling voice. "You're not here for me," I said quietly. "You're here for them." She didn't deny it. I opened the door wider, not to let her in, but to show her the exit. Family isn't who remembers you when it's convenient. It's who stands beside you when it costs something. She stood frozen for a beat, then turned and walked into the hallway without a word. That night, I stared out at the Austin skyline. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like clarity. My lawyer called the next morning. The court was preparing charges, real ones, and not just civil penalties, potential criminal counts. Support flooded in, messages from women across the country, a handwritten letter from a woman in Ohio who'd watched the trial coverage with her daughter and said, "You showed her what survival looks like." Donations came too, enough to ease my legal burdens. But the part that caught me most off guard was a message from Shelby, the girl I used to sit next to in 8th grade science. "I always wondered why you stopped coming to school. I'm so sorry I didn't ask." I called her. We talked for an hour, about dumb teachers and Lisa Frank folders and the boy who used to throw spitballs at us. I didn't mention the lawsuit. For once I just laughed. Then the envelope came, official, embossed seal, inside, a subpoena. My name, bold and sharp at the top. I'm to testify, under oath, against Dennis and Darlie. I didn't know what to expect when I walked into that diner, but somehow, seeing Anitra felt like coming home. She smiled before I even reached the booth, the same way she used to when we were teenagers, wide, honest, without calculation. The hum of the place wrapped around us, clinking coffee cups, quiet conversations, the low hum of old country, playing through a dusty speaker above the jukebox. "How long's it been?" she asked, eyes soft. "Too long," I said, sitting across from her. "But I've been living in someone else's storm. Needed time to find my own sky." We didn't talk about court, or lawsuits, or Darlie's IV lies. We talked about where Anitra lived now, the garden she kept, the students she taught piano to in her living room. "I watched it all, you know," she said, stirring her coffee slowly. I didn't want to show up like the others, only when it was convenient." I met her eyes. "That's why it means something that you didn't." There was no dramatic apology, no unpacking of wounds, just 2 women reconnecting through presence. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd locked away, how much I'd mistaken survival for silence. "Maybe this whole time," I said, "I was trying to heal with the wrong people." After dinner, I walked home alone. The streets of Austin glowed golden under the street lamps, familiar and unfamiliar all at once. At my apartment door, I paused. In my mailbox, another envelope waited. Legal seal, official weight. I didn't open it right away. Inside, my home was still, the kind of still that used to make me nervous. Now, it felt earned. I passed the hallway where childhood photos still hung. One of me, smiling at 10, gap-toothed and sunburned. Another with my parents, arms posed stiffly around my shoulders. I didn't flinch as I walked by them this time. I didn't feel haunted. In the living room, I found the last voicemail my mother ever left me, an icy voice clipped with guilt and performance. I hovered my finger above the delete button, not in anger, not even in finality, just readiness. Click. gone. Later, with coffee in hand and an old blanket around my shoulders, I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked against a fresh page. I titled it, Surviving the Family Name. Not to expose, not to retaliate, to make sense, to breathe. I began typing. Sometimes family ends where survival begins. Outside, the wind stirred. Inside, it was quiet, and I was finally okay with that. I glanced at the unopened letter from my father sitting in a drawer. It could wait. This isn't where it ends. It's where I begin. Maybe your family didn't leave you at a bus depot. Maybe they just stopped showing up for who you really are. But if you've ever felt abandoned, used, or betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, know this. Healing isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your name, your choices, your peace. I spent years chasing approval from ghosts. What I learned is, love without respect isn't love, it's control. And silence doesn't equal peace. It's just noise waiting to explode. So speak, stand tall, choose the family you build, not the one you were born into. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story moved you, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, I still want to know. What didn't sit right? And hey, if this story touched your heart, or even just made you think, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This space is for stories that matter, and for voices like yours.